Hey smokers, Dragon1 here, and I've committed a crime. A crime against the entire Windows 98 community. I've put all the guts of the Windows 98 machine in this monstrosity of a compact, pre-built piece of shit. Now, you're probably wondering, why did I do this? Because I wanted to get 10 more FPS out of this fucking game. I put it in this. And did it help at all? No. So, let's get back to the task at hand. What I intend to do with this machine is, of course, put an SSD in it, like always. But we won't be using this. Interesting, right? So that means that if we're actually using SATA, it'll run at full performance, right? But how are we going to do that with a Windows 98 machine? Well, as I said earlier, this is actually not a Windows 98 machine. It has all the same Windows 98 machine hardware from the last Windows 98 machine video. All of its cards. The only thing that's different is the RAM, the processor, and, well, that's about it. Everything is pretty much exactly the same. And it didn't really take too much time to get everything back up and running exactly how it was before. Because, you know, the video card's the same, everything's the same. But there's one advantage to using this pre-built motherboard that was actually designed for Windows XP. And that is SATA connectors. So if we have SATA connectors, we can use this. Well, this. Elementary, of course. And I have the proper power adapters to go from Model X to SATA. And we can get rid of this hunkin' thing. So now you're probably saying this is no longer a period-correct Windows 98 machine build. Well, that is correct. But in the near future, I have a secondary Windows 98 machine that does have all period-correct hardware in it. So you still have something to look forward to if you are waiting for something that isn't this travesty. But before we can even begin, we need to get the data from here, a 30 gigabyte hard drive, to our 32 gigabyte SSD. A match made in heaven, if you ask me. Now, we won't be using this computer to transfer the data. We're going to be using a surrogate machine to transfer the data sector by sector from the hard disk to the SSD. Now, I'm well aware that Windows 98 has no trim support, but the speed increase, no matter what, from switching over to a full-speed SSD will be pretty comparable and much better. Now, since I'm going to run into a little bit of a problem because Windows 98 has no SATA drivers, and if it makes this SSD unbootable, I will cry. So this is the aforementioned surrogate computer. It's quite a rat's nest, I'll admit, but it's meant for temporary use of transferring information from different hard drives to other hard drives. So this is our actually 40 gigabyte drive. Hopefully there's enough free space. And this is our 32 gigabyte SSD. So we're going to transfer it from this to this. So what this is going to allow us to do is we'll have our original and our copy. And what we'll be able to do is boot this first, see how long it takes, then boot this next with the exact same data to see exactly how much of a speed increase we actually got in terms of boot time. So let's get this clone started. So first what we're going to do is transfer an image of the original Windows 98 installation onto an external drive so that just in case something goes wrong with the clone, I don't waste like 6 hours of my life trying to clone directly onto this. So hopefully this has enough free space to fit on this, because I really don't know if that's going to work. But we're going to do it anyway. Okay, so I happen to be using baby's first cloning utility. Yeah, I'm using the Acronis TrueImage 2012 boot disk to do my file copies. Seems pretty primitive, but hey, I've actually gotten myself out of some jams with this baby. Yeah, it's actually probably the simplest, most straightforward, and actually useful, and, it works. So, okay, so here we have our FAT32 drive, which is our Windows 98 drive, and this is going to be our destination. Luckily for us, it only needs to back up 6.4 gigabytes, so clearly I didn't fill the thing up. So before we start backing up, I want to take a look at some backup options here. We can increase the compression level if we want to save space on the destination drive, which is pretty much not necessary. You can, of course, write at the fastest possible speed. Don't need to worry about free space threshold. Archive splitting is not really needed. Error handling. Now this is where it gets kind of important. Sometimes when drives are failing, they'll have bad sectors. Well, almost always when drives are failing, they have bad sectors, but when you're trying to back up a drive, especially if you're trying to do data recovery in some way or another, you're going to have to check this box right here, which is to ignore bad sectors. This software will actually make image files that have the missing sectors that it detects as bad, and will actually keep them bootable and working, even though they are technically damaged. Now, of course, you'll be missing some data, but it'll still boot. Now, why am I saying this? I haven't used the 98 machine in a while, and if its drive is on the brink of failure, because, I don't know, it's like a 10-year-old drive, then if we do run into any bad sectors, I don't want this transfer getting hung up at all. And I want to get it off this drive as soon as possible and right onto that SSD. And then, of course, we want to put it into silent mode, which will suppress any messages about bad sectors so that it doesn't actually stop the transfer waiting for us to say, continue please. So I'm going to hit proceed, and it's going to start churning. So I couldn't even turn around for 2 seconds, and the backup operation is already complete. So either it failed catastrophically, or it's all ready to go. So let's transfer the disk image back to the onto the SSD. This is our drive. Of course, don't want it plugged in so we don't accidentally wipe it. And of course, the SSD once again. About to be wiped for the 40th time. Power and SATA connection. Looks good. So let's fire up the Fisher-Price version of your favorite disk cloning utility. So instead of backup, we're going to do recovery. Alright, so we're going to recover the Windows 98 machine backup from today. Next, recover whole disks and partitions. So here's the important part. The 6 gigs of used space, and master boot record, and track 0, which I guess makes this thing bootable. So now the most important part, the destination disk. And luckily for us, we have disk 2 here, our SanDisk SSD. I don't know what this recover disk signature is, but let's just go ahead and recover to that. Do we have any options? So, I hope you guys weren't too attached to the black and white installation of the previous Windows 98 install from the last video, because it's getting deleted. I don't see how we could go wrong. We could go fucking wrong. It's finished! Now, to do a boot up test. Alright, so this is it. We're going to start off by using our original IDE hard disk with our Windows 98 installation on it, with all the games ready to go, just like in the Windows 98 machine games video. Everything's exactly the same, except we're dealing with a faster processor. So, let's see how long it takes to boot. Here we go. Yes! Under a minute. 56.94. That is faster than a fresh install on the SD or SSD to, well, the IDE adapter card. Okay, let's just take a minute to contemplate what a piece of shit this is. Now, let's be completely honest. This thing is really only designed to work with CD drives, DVD drives, that really don't have that much data bandwidth to begin with. This thing is just to solve a problem. If, like, you have an emergency and you need to transfer some data, this thing will get the job done. But, in all honesty, if you want speed, you gotta look somewhere else. So, successful boot. It works. The IDE drive works. So this is where it's going to get a little bit touchy. If we start using our SSD on SATA and not IDE, we could run into some problems. I'm going to use this incredibly dramatic lighting angle to install the SSD. These are the parts we need. So first, we'll connect this. And next, we'll connect this for the 200th time. Now, we'll connect this to the motherboard. And this to Molex. And we're good to go. Shit. Okay. CD-ROM group. Perhaps the SATA bus hasn't been enabled. SATA adapter disabled. Well, let's fix that shit right now. Come on. Okay, it's not even looking for it. So, after a little bit of tweaking, but not really anything, instead of plugging in our SSD, I plugged in a regular mechanical SATA drive. And guess what? It recognizes it! So what happens when I plug in our SSD? It doesn't recognize it! So basically, this little piece of shit has been the bane of my existence for the past, like, 5 videos. So I was just here editing this, and I thought to myself, wait a minute, I never tried to reset the BIOS. Maybe there's something wrong with it. Maybe it needs to just get reset. Holy shit! Do it! Boop. It didn't work. I guess it is really just hopeless then. And the saddest part is, my last hope for getting this Windows 98 installation clone on an SSD to work is to use this piece of shit again. This is the last time. At least it's dependable, you know. It works. Let's check out that boot menu. And what do you know? It's right here. It wasn't gonna work anyway. It's wonderful. Okay, I get it. It's not meant to be. This SSD is just cursed. Everything just sucks with it. I haven't had a situation where this thing actually works right. Maybe I should actually just buy a real SSD and do this, because I got this on eBay from some guy. I don't even know. I got one more thing I can try. I'll plug this into this surrogate computer, which I know is able to boot off this thing. It is newer. It is like a 2009 computer. It's gonna have to load up some drivers to even get this to work, and it might not even load the drivers up. And then we won't have the graphics card. We won't have the sound card. We won't have the capture card. We won't have the Ethernet card. We won't have anything. Is that something you really want me to do? End this video? End the SSD adventure with Windows 98 looking like crap? I couldn't think of any better way to do it. It's so quiet. Shit! Intel Pentium dual core on a totally unprepared installation of Windows 98 2nd edition. Holy shit. Is it working? Holy crap, I can clap with one hand!